If you're standing in the music store, trying to decide whether the sax you put in your case today will actually hold its own in a band rehearsal, a college gig, or even a home recording session, you're probably looking for something that feels solid, stays in tune, and doesn't drain your wallet before the first note rings out. You want an instrument that you can rely on night after night, not a flashy model that looks good on paper but turns out to be a headache when you actually play it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Selmer SAS711 professional alto saxophone lands right in that middle ground where a lot of intermediate players and even a few seasoned amateurs feel comfortable. It isn't the ultra-expensive handcrafted masterpiece you'd see on a professional stage, but it also isn't a beginner's plastic-capped model that needs constant tweaking. The key question is whether the trade-offs it makes line up with what you need day to day. First, let's talk about the rib body construction. Selmer's ribbing adds a subtle stiffness that many players notice as a more focused sound, especially when you push the instrument into the upper register. In a typical college rehearsal where you might be sharing a cramped room with trumpets, trombones, and a drum kit, that extra projection can keep your alto from getting lost in the mix. It also means the sax feels a tad heavier than a standard hollow bore model, which can be a blessing for players who want a more grounded feel, but it could be a minor inconvenience if you're hauling the instrument around campus all day. The pads are another point where the SAS711 tries to strike a balance. Selmer pairs Pisoni Pro Leather Pads with metal resonators. Leather pads are known for their warm response, and the metal resonators help the pads close more quickly, giving you a cleaner attack on fast passages. I tested it on a bebop standard last week, and the key action felt snappy enough to keep up with rapid chord changes, while the tone stayed rounded rather than harsh. That said, leather pads do require a little more maintenance than synthetic ones. They can dry out in very dry climates, so you might need to keep a pad conditioner handy if you live in the desert or travel a lot. Now, the mouthpiece. Selmer includes a Henri Selmer Paris neck mouthpiece right out of the box, which is a nice surprise for a mid-range sax. Most players at this price point have to buy a separate mouthpiece to get decent intonation and flexibility. The Paris neck mouthpiece is cut for a balanced response across the low, middle, and high registers, making it a solid choice for jazz players who need to bend notes on the fly, as well as for classical students who must nail a precise vibrato. If you already have a favorite mouthpiece, you can swap it out without any special tools, which is a plus. The blued steel springs are the kind of detail that doesn't make headlines but shows up when you actually play. They're less prone to corrosion than plain steel, which is reassuring if you tend to sweat a lot while performing or if you store the sax in a humid basement. Over a few months of weekly gigs, the springs stayed smooth and didn't develop that gritty feeling you sometimes get with cheaper instruments. Hand engraving is mostly an aesthetic perk, but it does signal that Selmer has paid attention to the finishing touches. It doesn't affect the sound, but for anyone who cares about the visual presence of their instrument on stage, the matte finish combined with subtle engraving gives the SAS711 a professional look without the flashiness of a lacquered model that can show fingerprints easily. So, who should consider buying the SAS711? If you're an intermediate player who has outgrown a student sax and is looking for a reliable instrument that can handle both jazz combos and school orchestras, this sax hits a sweet spot. It's also a good entry point for adults picking up the instrument later in life because the key layout is standard Selmer, the learning curve stays familiar, and the included mouthpiece saves you an extra purchase right away. Musicians who travel frequently will appreciate the sturdy ribbing and corrosion-resistant springs, which tend to survive the bumps of touring. Who might want to skip it? If you're a full-time professional looking for a custom hand-engraved, fully handcrafted Selmer Model 22 or something with a gold-plated finish, the SAS711 will feel a step down. Likewise, if you're a beginner on a very tight budget, the price might be higher than a basic student sax, and you might still need a professional teacher to help you get the most out of the leather pads and the neck mouthpiece. Finally, players who have a strict preference for synthetic pads because they never want to worry about climate affecting them might find the leather pads a minor annoyance. From a practical standpoint, the strengths are the responsive key action, the included Paris neck mouthpiece, and the durability of the rib body and blued springs. The weaknesses are the slightly heavier weight,